Hello everybody and welcome to Code's Corner How To. This is a mini-series, a branch off of the usual Code's Corner content, and is basically going to be a tutorial series dedicated to just explaining how this game came about, what the rules are, how to play it yourself. It's not difficult. The main premise of this tabletop role-playing board game was simply to be a template set of rules that a group of people could just get together with a couple of dice and basically do whatever they wanted with it. That's why there aren't any templates for abilities or skills or traits to a certain extent, because obviously the system can be translated into any genre, theme, setting, time, place, dimension. It doesn't matter. And that's the whole point, is that we could set this in my book series universe, and it would still work fine, but other people could take it and put it into Warhammer 40k or D&D setting with easier, simpler rules. We wanted the rules to be as simple, but still as operational and as functional as possible, which is why we don't use tons of dice. We don't use uncommon ones like freaking D4 all the time, or like a D8000. We don't use anything that isn't ordinary. I guess we don't use D20s very much as the most common dice by far, but that D6s. I don't know. D10s are kind of common, at least. But yeah, so basically this episode is going to be discussing the main rules for just how the game itself runs, and then after that, later episodes will be on techniques that I personally use as a battle boss, as a GM, however you want to. I mean, it's called battle boss for Quest for the Core, but again, any genre, time period, it's whatever you want. The techniques that I use, how to tell a good story, and also how to work the settings that you will all be seeing in the actual Code's Corner videos, podcasts. Because those settings are very unique, they're very fleshed out. Some of them take years for me to actually create properly, but they aren't difficult to understand or to learn. And the whole point is how to control the character's information, the player's information, so that they enjoy it without knowing too much, without being able to metagame. This is also meant to basically introduce people to the tabletop role-playing genre as a game type, rather than looking for a video game that can do what you want. Just make a board game that does it instead, which is what I did in this case, because D&D and Warhammer 40k are really, really expensive to buy and to order and to paint and sculpt and glue together, and that's baloney. I don't want to do that. So what I decided to do was make my own, because I'm that kind of person that says, I have a problem, I don't want to spend thousands of dollars on figurines so that I can just have them get destroyed by my dog, something like that. So I'm going to make my own. It doesn't require nearly as many models, even though I do have some of my own design, my own custom design, because Hero Forge, they're really cool and detailed, and they look really nice, and they're not that expensive if you know what you're doing. Anyway, on to the actual episode and the topic at hand. So first things first, if there's nothing you take away from this episode except for the following, my job will have been completed. Basically, all I want for you guys to take away from this is that there aren't any set templates for abilities, skills, races, traits, attributes, proficiencies, none of that. I mean, there's systems for it and how to calculate it, all that stuff. But there are no set standards, mainly because of the setting that this is meant for. Was made to fit best, which is my book series. So the whole point is that you can, the player making the character and the battle boss have to have very frequent conversation and communication in order to decide what abilities should be able to do what, the cooldowns, if there are any, the damage that they do, or what it does, how often you can use it a day, or whatever, what it's called, how it works, that sort of thing. Even with weapons and armor, it's all different. Including the attributes. The attributes for Quest with the Core use the Fallout system, the special system, which is strength, perception, endurance, charisma, agility, intelligence, and luck. We have sanity added as well for one of the other universes that we have, and for like intimidating stuff like that. And that's how it works. The skills run from 1 to, or rather, I guess from 0 to 10. 0 if an enemy or a NPC, because PCs can't have 0 in a skill, that's just impossible. Well, I guess not impossible, like a robot, but never mind. 0 is dedicated to things that simply cannot be done by this NPC, this character, this entity. Like, it's just physically impossible for them to do this task. For example, one of the enemies in my upcoming campaign that we'll be running probably next weekend involves weird demon crocodile things. They have 0 charisma because they physically cannot speak. There is no, like, oh, they have a 1 in that skill because if they get a critical hit, they can speak. No, that's not how that works. They don't have vocal cords that are adapted enough to speak English or any other language. So no, they have 0 in that skill. But when it comes to a character or an NPC having a skill of 1 in something, in any of these special skills, the 1 means that they can do it, but they don't know how. And this is used more for a penalty or a debuff. Oh, pardon me. A debuff or a penalty on certain types of roles that need a particular skill. So let's see what's an example. Perception. Perception has a lot of uses. The character that just does not know how to use a gun, like they've never seen one before. They're from some planet that doesn't know how to operate firearms of any kind, these bows and arrows. They don't know how to use a gun. They don't know how to operate it. They would have a 1 in perception, but only on rolls using a firearm. They could be actually have excellent eyesight, which could give them a high perception, but they just get a 1 when firing a gun because they don't know how to use it. That's where you would usually set a 1 for something. A better example of a skill permanently having a 1, is just a debuff on a specific role type, would be like zombies. They have a 1 in intelligence. They're freaking idiots. They can't do anything. They can't talk. They can't think for themselves for the most part. They have some degree of sentience, I suppose, but it's all instinctual. They can't actually function like a normal human being. So they have a 1 in intelligence because they can still think. They aren't incapable of it. It's the win of a 0. It's about 1 because if they're gonna do something, they're quite if they're gonna try to operate a computer for whatever goddamn reason. It's not want to operate a computer, but if they want to do it and they get a critical roll, then they would succeed and then be able to operate that computer. It's very, very unlikely. It's only 1 out of 10% chance that it actually happens, but nevertheless, it can. And then 2 through 9 are the most common numbers for attributes, and basically they're the most common. 10 is the maximum number a character can have, an infantry character can have in a particular attribute. 10 means that they cannot critically fail a roll. So this system is run off of rolling a d10 for skill checks. And every number on the d10 parallels a number to an attribute skill. So, for example, if you have a 1 in something, you must get a 10 in order to pass that skill check. Now, a 10 is the maximum number you could possibly get on a d10. Obviously, it's 10 size, 10 numbers. Included in that, 2. If you have 2 in a skill, you got to get a 9 to pass. 3, you got to get an 8. 4, you got to get a 7, 6, and then 5 is kind of in the middle. So if a character rolls a corresponding number, but it's not a pass or a fail, it's the exact parallel. For example, 5. If you have a skill of a 5 and you roll a 5, you're on the edge. There is no defined win or pass. then it's up to the battle boss to decide if you pass or fail, because you're on the line. So it's like so close whether you pass or fail or not. It can be interpreted either way. So the battle boss determines if they pass or fail, depending on which would be funnier or for story purposes. So a 10 is the max skill a character can have in a skill. A 10 means you can't critically fail. If you have any number below a 10, as in 9 to 1, not 0, 0 you can't do it anyway, 9 to 1, if you get a 1 on the dice roll, you critically fail. Now that is worse than a normal fail because it means that you're, I don't know, what could you be doing? Usually it results in you hurting yourself, hurting somebody else that you're companioned with or allied with, destroying your armor or your gear, or in some way inconveniencing you or somebody nearby as much as possible to the realistic extent. If you have a 10 in that skill, since it's the only way you could possibly fail a roll with a 10 skill in something is by getting a 1, it's unfair to say that the only way you could fail is by getting a crit fail, which could result in somebody's death, even though your character is a master or an expert in this particular skill or have a 10 in the first place. So they wouldn't be able to crit fail because they're so good at their job, they're so good at whatever it is. To give an example, Marcus Dranic, which is a character that you've all, well, some of you I'm sure, saw in the first Code's Corner episode. I don't think he's a 10 in anything. Oh, he's a 10 in agility. That's what he has. Okay. So he's a 10 in agility. Agility is used for running around. It determines on if you're using an actual board, like a D&D board with like walls and buildings and stuff like that, then that determines how many meters squared, or how many square meters they can move in a single turn. And it also determines how easily you, or like how stealthy you are, how fast you are. And normally, although there isn't a rule dictating this, generally the higher agility, the faster or the higher initiative you get with initiative rolls, which we didn't see initiative in the first Code's Corner episode because a mix of I'm adept at being a battle boss and following my own bloody rules, and because there was no mass combat. Initiative is usually used for combat involving 2 or more characters, as in PCs, player characters, because then it can get confusing and like words get changed around, and it's not fair because the players can manipulate their turn order to best cheat the system. So to avoid that, if a combat involves 2 or more players, then you roll initiative. If there's only got 1 player in it, then it's just back and forth between them and the enemy anyway, so there's no real need. Plus, most characters have skills or traits that dictate where they go anyway. Like if they're particularly slow, then they go last, or if they have like a skill that lets them go first, then they go first, obviously. Anyway, so yeah, if you have a 10 in a skill, it's a max. You can't crit fail, but you can normally fail on a 1, which is I like that bit. Vehicles like trucks, cars, jets, planes, starfighters, starships, whatever, not animals, like anything that can be ridden in or is more powerful than a human being, like, I don't know, a capital ship as big as Jupiter, that would obviously have stats higher than 10, because it's obviously stronger than any normal human being could possibly be by themselves. Which is why vehicles, they break the out of 10 system. With vehicles, the dice you roll depends on their skill. So if a vehicle's skill in a particular trait, now vehicles do have different traits. They have hull, firepower, accuracy, fuel, and speed, I think. That's all of them. Probably more, but because I don't have notes in front of me right now, so I have to apologize. So if they have a higher than a 10 in any of those skills, hull is health and fuel and stuff like that, firepower, accuracy. If they have higher than a 10, they would use a D20. If they're higher than a 20, they would use the next highest, which would probably be a D100 at that point. And then it just gets, like, although I don't think anything has higher than a 20 currently. So, if it has higher than a 10, You would roll use a d20 to determine it, and then the dice gets higher and higher as the skill gets higher and higher, as the skill surpasses the dice rather. What else? Yes, health. Health system isn't set either, for the most part. For player characters, it's not set. The way that I run enemies, because enemies in this game are, for the most part, at least for the main universe, as you all saw, they are meant to be really, really squishy. They are meant to be thrown at the player characters en masse and in like tens or more in order to be able to do anything that lasts more than a turn. Because certain abilities that PCs can have, or will ask to have, because again it's up to battle boss to determine who has what. If the battle boss lets a player character have an ability that does 10 D100 damage, as in a max of 1000 damage, they will be able to obliterate anything in their path, minus maybe like a freaking cosmic dragon or something like that. So again, if you want to have fun with this game, balance it yourselves. All right, it's not our job, not our job to tell you how much you can have. Do it yourself, because it's not going to be fun an overpowered character in the game. Okay, this is not going to be fun for you or your party or the battle boss. Okay, word of the wise. But yeah, so health isn't set for PCs because certain different things can determine that. Race, body mass, body build, age, what else? And also armor, how much armor they have. So for example, if one of the characters that we've made is a cyborg, they are 1% flesh. Only their brain, part of their brain, is left. The rest is metal. But it's not just any metal, it's a very, 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 very strong titanium alloy mix that's like nigh impenetrable. So he has like almost 1,000 health because he's metal. Like blunt weapons don't do anything to him because he is metal. Like it's really hard to kill this thing because it's a walking tank, effectively. That's the point of this character, was he is very, very tough to kill. But on the other end of the spectrum, humans have the least amount of health because they are humans. They're at the bottom of the food chain. They're shit. This is on purpose. Human characters, which they lack in strength and perception, they make up for in charisma, stealth, and just general, like, blending in. Next of the chain of races is Kodian. Kodian is 10 times stronger than a human, faster, smarter, all that stuff, but 10 times worse than Kodian Highbloods. Kodians are in the middle. They're really just the average race that like people pick if they don't know what to do. Sorry, I got a text there for a second. They are in the middle of the road. They usually have 200 health ish, not including armor. Humans have human PCs have to have at least 100 health, because preferably more than that, because Kodian Highbloods, their fists do 1d100 damage, which means if a player character is fighting somebody and they have 100 health and they're a human, they could have their face squished in with one punch. So, if you want to have a longer game, give your human characters armor, because they will get just raped by literally everything, including other humans, because melee weapons all do, at minimum, 1d100, which does make some of them, like, useless for Kodian Highbloods, because they do 1d100, basically. But even then, humans are meant to be bad. Kodian Highbloods, Kodian Highblood PCs, usually have like 250, 300 health. And then, of course, there are armor added onto all of that. And then, on top of the armor, like, if they're special, then, you know, if there's, like, other circumstances, you know, they're particularly well built or whatever, if they're really, really jacked, or if they're wearing, metal plate. So, that sort of thing. Now, when it comes to Mook basic minion enemies, they do have a certain standard. Human enemies without armor, the basic run-of-the-mill thug in an alleyway with a pocket knife, they usually have 50 health. This is because, again, humans are meant to be absolute dog shite. They are meant to be just stomped on without any other type of character, any other race, breaking a single sweat. It's their point. They get thrown at PCs like, I don't know, like B1 droids in Star Wars, basically. They're that equivalent. Meaning that, like, a Kodian Highblood, if it gets max damage, could kill 2 people with 1 strike. Now that wouldn't actually happen because you can't target 2 people with 1 punch, but the equivalent of that, which makes it very powerful. That's the point. Then human enemies with like armor, usually like police or soldiers, they have 100 health because they have body armor that protects them. And there are certain abilities, certain traits, certain effects that ignore that 50 points of armor, which is like fire. What else ignores armor? Yeah, fire, psychic abilities, they generally ignore armor. But not all. Fire does, again. Melting. That's about it, I think. And there are certain traits and abilities that PCs can have, depending on what they want for their character, what the battle boss decides on, that can just make this character's attacks ignore armor, just entirely. Or they can have an ability that immediately gets rid of their armor, the enemy's armor. Like some weird dissolve or corruption ability that just makes it melt away or something retarded like that. I don't know. Whatever you guys want. It's not my problem. And then next we go to Kodians. Kodian enemies, they have 100 health based. Without any armor on, they have 100 health. Because they are meant to be stronger than humans. But not by too much. Then, with armor, again the amount of armor an enemy has can change. I'm not saying it must be 50 health or else you're a freaking idiot and you're playing the game wrong. No. A human enemy can have 800 health if they're in Juggernaut Titanite armor. It's just whatever the battle boss wants to do, whatever the PCs decide to try to buy in the market, whatever, I don't know. So again, the armor points aren't set in stone, but the base health is. So Kodian basic Mook enemy health is 100. Kodian Highblood base Mook enemy health is 200. Why such a big jump? Because armor. Because armor usually is involved, not so much for humans enemies, because human enemies are again meant to be thrown at the PCs like B1s. But for like Kodians and Kodian Highbloods, they are meant to be used sparingly by the battle boss unless you're on a planet only purely inhabited by Kodians or Kodian Highbloods, which is very rare, but it happens. So if that's the case, then they can have armor and stuff, and then it's not as big a jump. What else? Robots. Robots are really tanky. Like cyborgs, androids, they're like nigh indestructible pretty much. They take half damage from like most things because they're made of metal. Like they have like at minimum, I would say 300 health. I think is probably a good number for like some service droid. Like if you want to have like a combat battle, they probably have like 500 health because they're meant to be extra armored. On to weapons. Weapons, yes, the final part of the video probably. Weapons are generally not standardized, nor are there many templates for PCs. Again, most of these things are set for the battle boss to use when making enemies for campaigns and for missions and all that stuff. PCs, because I wanted this to be as customizable as humanly possible, PCs can have anything, any weapon they can come up with in their imagination. For the most part, again, make something too OP the battle boss will say, no, you can't have that, or just take it away from you immediately, or he'll just say, you're a freaking idiot, and no, you can't use that, like, black hole generator staff thing. For example, what's a good example? Yeah, Marcus Dranik, the one that you guys saw, his knives are not a template weapon. They aren't set in the rulebook that we have. It's not set in stone. It's just not. Like those knives, as we saw in the game, in the middle of the recording, I said that I actually buffed the knives' damage halfway through because they aren't set. In the battle boss, I can do whatever I want. The characters, the Imperator, he wanted a character with knives that have a burning edge. So I'm like, okay, you have massive knives that melt through like steel, like lightsabers do, with like the slag and all that stuff. Pretty cool. So they do a lot of damage. Another example would be like a staff that a PC uses. One of my PCs has a staff with a big crystal on top that shoots energy out of it when he hits it. Like that's not a standardized thing. You can't standardize sort of like some jury-rigged, half-assed, made in your garage staff that shoots energy balls. But for enemies, most weapons are standardized. Again, like melee weapons usually do 1 to 3 D100 damage depending on the tech level. You know, like between a pocket knife and a lightsaber, obviously is going to be a big difference. When it comes to police forces, military forces, their stuff must be standardized. This is a rule in the rule book. There have to be set loadouts for different enemy types if they're part of the police or the military or the SWAT or I don't know, some alien freaking invasion force. They have to be standard at some point. So, for example, Dranik, he uses a rail pistol. And if he runs out of knives, he does have a rail pistol on him. That is standardized. Every single mention of a rail pistol and the rule book and the character's inventory is the exact same stats across the board. Now, if you're talking about a rail pistol in a different universe, using the same Quest for the Core rule set, then they can change depending on the time period and the setting of that other universe. But in K0, in the Marcus Dranik universe, every rail pistol, rail rifle, rail shotgun, rail scanner gun, are all the exact same. They have the exact same stats, same mag capacity, which is infinite for a rail gun. Everything else. Another example would be like assault rifles, stuff like that. They all have set abilities. Rail pistols, they can puncture armor. Every single rail pistol can puncture armor across the K0 universe. Because that's just how it works. They're made by one company that must standardize it because of the government and all that stuff. So there has to be set formulas and how things are made. So that's how most enemy weapons work. There are standards in the rulebook. You know, whether it punches armor, whether it does X amount of damage, what's the perception check like, and how many shots a ranged weapon can make in one attack. For example, rail pistols, Marcus Dranik's rail pistol, which is not any different from any other rail pistol in the Keizer universe. Let me emphasize that one more time. Okay. Every rail pistol, including Dranik's, has the basic attack of 1 shot per action, I guess. And again, you can take 2 actions, 2 movements, 1 movement, 1 attack, or you can like Overwatch, stuff like that as well. But that set action number is more for tabletop with models on a big table in your basement with like buildings and cover and like models. That's more used for that because it matters more. But in our case, with the podcast and Marcus Dranik's little mini storyline, where we don't have models on a board, it doesn't matter as much because time isn't as set. There is kind of an action limit, only in combat, pretty much, as per D&D and all that other stuff. So his rail pistol can make 1 shot by base without any penalties to aim at all. However, every rail pistol in K0 can be put onto automatic, which means that it makes 3 shots per action and a penalty to the perception check. That is standardized for everything. Rail assault rifles, they can take 3 shots with a -1, I think, or -2, I forget, but they do more damage. What else? Rail scatter guns can't take more than 1 shot per action, because it's a shotgun, and unless it's full auto, at least, unless it's full auto, then it can be taken more. Some machine guns, they do the same damage as a rail pistol, but they can take 4 shots with an aim penalty of 1, and 2 shots without a penalty, I think. That's how it works. Again, I had the notes in front of me, so I have to remember off the top of my head. So that's how weapons work, and how there are some standards, because without standards, I would have to custom make everything individually, and that would take forever, and you guys would never have even seen the first episode of Dranic's campaign, because I would still be making loadouts for soldiers. So no, are standardized. PCs. This is the real lesson of this episode. Before I sign off, players are allowed to do whatever they want when they make a character. They can propose a literal god who can open singularities in midair, teleport, go invisible, all that shenanigans, at will, no cooldowns on their abilities. And when they bring that to the battle boss must decide, do I want this god in my party? Do I want him in this campaign? Does he fit in the campaign? Does it make sense with what I have planned? Can I fit it in? All the usual stuff. Obviously, in the case of a person making a god character and wanting to put it into some universe with 2 guys who are human engineers, whatever the hell, the battle boss is going to say no. If you make a character with 10 in every single attribute, and then even if they have absolutely terrible abilities and traits, those all 10 across the board are going to immediately make them incredibly overpowered, because they can do everything perfectly, effectively what that means. So, when the player brings that maxed out attribute character to the battle boss, I can look at the stats immediately and go, do you think I'm high? No, you're stupid. Fix these attributes. That is why the battle boss and the player must communicate so much and so well when making a character, because if not, it can lead to overpowered or underpowered. I know I talk a lot about OP characters because there are plenty, but underpowered characters, pardon, are very, very prominent as well. For example, in an upcoming K2 campaign, which is a paranormal scary horror campaign that I'm making, I will be taking control of a character. When I first made him, he was really good. Well, he wasn't really good, but he was like, he fit the story really well. I have an accent for him. He's British. He's pretty funny. So I made him first, and then I asked other people who I play with. They're like, oh, yeah, I went for this character. And they all made characters who are far better, do far more damage, more frequently, and have better stats than my first character had and did. So I look back and I'm like, well, I can't have this character be the, shitty underdog of the party, because he's supposed to be the leader, pretty much. So I went back and I buffed him a bunch. I did not touch many of his attributes, but I did give him more abilities, gave him more traits, gave him more weapons, buffed his weapons, all this stuff, to make it better, and make him on a level that matched the rest of the party. That's the battle boss's job. Before a game even starts, before you even get people over your house, or over Discord, Skype, what have you, this has to be done beforehand. Because if a person, the day of a planned session, texts you, calls you, and is like, hey, I have a character here, can I show up at the session without giving you any knowledge of the character, and just have you roll with it? That person's a dick. Being honest, that's a dick move. The battle boss must have time to look over every character in the party, decide whether they fit, whether their backstories are solid, balance them out. Because, another thing, do not let players, okay, this is battle bosses. If a battle boss sees that a character is over or underpowered, do not let that same person go back and edit their own character. Because obviously, they can't do it too well on their own. It's up to you, the battle boss, to do it for them. This is another question we're going to get out, I know. To determine who is a battle boss in a campaign, a battle boss must be the most experienced player in the group. This is a very stressed point. Because if not, because the game focuses so much on custom campaigns, there's only one templated mission, maybe two so far. No, three. Yeah, 3 templated missions that are so far that we've run before. We've tested; they're perfect for the most part. Besides those, you can't make a campaign out of those 3 missions because they're too far apart. They're too crazily set. Different planets, different planets, different settings, weather, climate, race, mission type, goal, all that stuff. It's all too widely spread apart for making a campaign out of it. So the battle boss must come up with their own missions, their own objectives, their own campaigns around the characters in the party, or not. I mean, I guess you could have, because I've done both. I have made a campaign and said, now you gotta make a character that fits this setting, is this race, gave them limits from the get-go. But I have also said, make me a character, and then I will build the campaign or a mission around that character. And I have done both. I have done both ways. I like them both because I can improvise really, really well. The Marcus Rannick episode that you guys watched, that's up on Kodian Gaming channel. Watch it. It's funny. I love that video. I improvised 90% of that. I had notes in front of me too. I had this whole not big, but I had this plan made, set up. But because the plans were on my iPad, and I used my iPad to record this audio, I couldn't see my notes and play the game at the same time, and record at the same time. So what I had to do was, before the game started, I had to scan my notes, and then just, hope that I followed it. Now, from what the Imperator has said, it was a fantastic session. He loved that session, and it went well. It was funny. It was action-packed. It was great. It was well told, well made. But I looked back the next day, and I didn't actually follow my plans. The plan deviation started with the layout of the club. The only thing that I had given about the layout of the club was that it was the basement of some block. I didn't plan out there was the columns and the guards and the DJ booth was covered in glass of a story. Or I didn't plan any of that out. I didn't actually decide on that. That's when it started, and that of course led to more problems and more deviations with the plan. So now my plan isn't ruined. It's the basic kill the manager goal is still there, but originally the manager was going to run from Dranik to another club that he owned, but because I didn't have my notes in front of me because I was recording the sacrifices I make for you guys, I quick thinking I had to make him run off to his warehouse because he was trying to escape the station, which makes more sense now that I look back on it, but nevertheless, I still had to deviate because of my improvisation skills. So being a battle boss really depends on how good a storyteller a person is. If you are a bad storyteller, do not volunteer to be a battle boss, because just like every other DM and GM in existence, if you can't storytell for crap, why are you in charge of telling the story? Be a player. Okay, now I can't speak for the Imperator in that sense. I have never purely played this game. I have battle bossed and played a PC and played a character, but I have never only played a character and not, like, I haven't not been the battle boss. I've always run the sessions and everything. Why? Not because I'm the creator of the game, not because I know all the rules off the top of my head, not because it's my universe and I do what I want, because I'm the best storyteller in my group of friends. That's it. Like, before I made this game, I had no experience with tabletop RPGs ever. To this day, I'd never played a single session of D&D, never made a character, haven't played any D&D or Call of Cthulhu or Age of Empire or what else is there? Dark Heresy or Road Trader. Never none of that. Never played any of it. Never. I've watched it. I've seen it all. I could do it. It's not that difficult, but I've never done it myself. And watching those games and seeing how complicated they were made me make this. Anyway. So yeah, that's my ending rant for today. Hope you all enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you all in the second episode of Marcus Trading's campaign.